The one concept that I have seen consistently across 300 books from different authors, different perspectives, is that all of the answers are within. What I
Mhm.
mean by that is you are the cause of your entire life, meaning all of your current circumstances are a result of like how you think, how you view the world, how you act.
Hey, investor, welcome back to another passive income adventure. We have Thurben James. He is the author of How to Read 50 Books in a Year, Just Like a CEO. Thurben has read over 300 books in the last couple of years and has put his information down in book format himself. And across all those books, he's able to distill down some really important information for us to be able to use in our businesses and in our investing journey. It's always great to have somebody who has read and experienced a lot and they can take things and aggregate them for us and save us a lot of time. And so come here, Thurben's tips on how to read faster, how to read more, and how to make those connections to make the most of your time spent reading more books and taking more action. Hey, Thurben, thanks so much for joining us. Listeners, today we have Thurben James. He is the author of How to Read 50 Books in a Year Like a CEO. If you need to read more books, and trust me that you do, Thurben is going to talk about his journey through the passive income lifestyle, his transitions, and then getting to the point where he was reading, and realized he was reading a lot of books. And his friend said, you should write a book. And so he is now the proud author of his first work. And he's just going to share with us his journey, what he's working on now, and really what drives him in the future as he's contemplating and planning his next passive income adventure. So welcome, Thurben.
Thank you for having me.
How about you kick us off with just telling us a little bit about your backstory? I know I just gave a really quick recap, but can you fill in the details and the blanks for us about your turning points and figuring out you needed to do something different? I'm sure it had something to do with reading a lot of books.
I'm originally from St. Croix. I was born there. I moved to Florida at 2 years old. That's where I've lived ever since. But the real like turning point for my entire life was I was 18 years old and I met this girl from my high school. And the reason I even reached
It's
out
all
to this
about a
girl,
girl.
but to be honest, like the only thought in my mind at the time was I like this girl. I want to ask her out. That's the only reason I reached out to her. It just turned into something different. but yeah, so I reached out to this girl from my high school on Instagram. I just slid in the DM, started a conversation with her, and at the time I'm in college because my dad told me to. I didn't want to go, but I just did it because I had no other option really.
Yep.
So I ended up talking to her, and she was the first rich person I've ever met in my entire life. Like, so I was seeing her like getting flown out on private jets every week, getting driven in a Ferrari. She owns a Tesla. Like, just it just opened my eyes to, oh, other people live like this. This is a possibility. I start talking to her. She recommends I read this book. It's called How Dying to Be Me by Nita Morjani. It's not my favorite book, but it just got me started on the
Gateway
path
book.
of reading. And so like it opened up my eyes to like looking to like learn more and see how I could change my life and make it better because at the time I was just miserable. I was contemplating suicide, just all honesty. Like I was contemplating suicide. I hated what I was doing in college. And so it gave me like hope just reading books. So the first year I met her, I read 10 books that year. I read 75 the year after that, 70 the year after that. And I even had just last year I read 107. And yeah, the books for me like delved into a world of like it helped me get out of my rut. If it gave me some hope for my situation. But yeah, that's what started me on like my entrepreneurial journey, to be honest.
That is, I hadn't heard that part of the story before. That is a showstopper right there because it really shows the power of hope and giving some sort of action plan to moving forward out of depression and out of that feeling of just loss. I know my kids are that same age now where they're transitioning into their young adult lifestyles and they don't know, should I go to college, should I not, what can I do for a job? And those who've opted out of college are working some pretty low paid jobs trying to get their landlord businesses going, and it is scary and it is frustrating. And I can't wait for them to hear your story because I think that just getting some sort of a guide and an action plan really does drive out depression and just that forsaken feeling. That's a powerful, powerful story. So now bring me back a little bit farther than that. When you were reading books in, say, junior high and high school, everybody wants their kids to read. They're always encouraging their kids to read. What was it about those earlier books that you'd been exposed to and being exposed to the new type of book or the new genre of book that really made that change for you?
Yeah, so it wasn't like a overnight thing. I would say it was really subtle if because it was like one thing led to the next. So I read that first book and so it got me thinking, and especially just seeing her lifestyle as the first person that was rich that I knew of, like personally, it begged the question in my mind, like it got me thinking differently, like how do I get rich? So naturally, my brain thought, where can I seek knowledge to answer this question? And I ended up getting to a book like Think and Grow Rich, the Millionaire Fast Lane. And then also all of a sudden I'm like because I'm reading these type of books, I'm seeing certain things pop up in my Instagram feed and or just being recommended to me on YouTube. And so it like led to me getting into the personal development space with seeing people like Grant Cardone, Ed Milet, and just so many like amazing just entrepreneurial people out there that I had no idea existed. And then it was very gradual because this was over the span of 5 years that before I ended up making my first book. It wasn't quick by any means, but I wouldn't change like a thing about it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you may be reading a certain type of book as a kid. And we were just talking about this at a meetup a couple of minutes ago, like Gen X 90s references. And we were talking about Lord of the Flies and how we had to pass the conch around. And the younger people were like, what are you even talking about? I was like, didn't you read that book in middle school? And most people were like, no, I didn't read it. My teacher told me to read it, but we just watched the movie instead. And then we're making all this jokes about how you could just now write a book report using Chat GPT and it's not having to read the stuff that you're not interested in reading, but you really found a genre that you could sink your teeth into and something that really made your eyes light up and changed your world around. So instead of reading all of the recommended book list of literature, you found a lot of hope in the self-help, but the self-help entrepreneurial. I think self-help can sometimes be a scary place to be because I think it gives this feeling of having to always be a high achiever, having to always be crushing it, always be on top of your mind, never having a negative thought. And I think that a lot of people can get sucked in what they call the self-help cult. And so how are you able to turn that world into something that was so influential and positive for you and avoid some of those feelings of, oh, I'm never going to be good enough. I'm never going to be like this person and getting sucked into some of the negative that can exist in that genre?
It really, for me, I think it's just like I mentioned earlier, it's just kind of gradual. Like it wasn't by any means one moment you read this amazing self-help book and it's, oh, I really resonate with this. And then you go try to apply it and you're just like, oh, I hate this. And also, I've read over 300 books at this point. Everything starts to like, you hear a lot of the same ideas maybe
Mm-hmm.
said in different ways from different authors. And then certain things you start realizing are like, yes, I like this idea, but it doesn't apply to me because it doesn't help me where I am, like right here. This is probably something you would do if you're at this financial status, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you would have to be like below where you currently are to experience certain things.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just really gradual dependent on the person. And I think too, the one thing I dislike about the self-help space is that they just push like just self-help, self-help, self-help instead of, hey, take a deep dive, look at yourself, do some reflection, and then make decisions like for your situation, not based on this person's situation, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the first example that jumps to my mind when you're talking about that is the first time that I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I think it was back in the year 2000, and I got all done reading it, and I felt, and I know we want passive income or residual income or whatever it was called. It was so long ago that I read it, and I really felt like it was speaking to something that I already had inside of me. I remember already trying to plan and trying to figure this out, and somebody told me that I needed to read that book because it was exactly what I was asking about and talking about. But what I found when I got done with it, that there were no real action steps, there were no action items. It didn't change my mindset because my mindset was already moving that direction. And I found myself just at a loss and saying, okay, what steps can I take now? And having to go out and do further research and find other books because I just didn't find that one to be like the earth shattering. And then there was another one that I read that reminds me of the Miracle Morning, because
Mhm.
I felt like that's a perfect example of what you're talking about, where I was able to take out of that book the things that were helpful to me, and I was able to leave behind the things that I just didn't really feel like I needed. Now, if I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and did all the savers originally, would my life probably be more productive? Yes. Is my goal to have a more productive life? Not really. And so that book really helped me to think I can take this, 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 and this, and I'm going to leave that, 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 and that. And so it improved my life dramatically, but at the same time, I didn't feel any pressure to do the items that were like, you know what, that's just really not fitting in with my lifestyle and my goals right now. So for me, that type of experience of being able to sift and being able to apply things that fit and being able to toss things that don't fit are how I was able to avoid that cult of the mindset in the self-help genre and really take what was beneficial and leave what was really harmful. And I also like how you said that the ideas start to repeat over and over and over again. Do you find as you grow and develop that some of the ideas that you were exposed to earlier that didn't really impact you come down the road later and you're like, oh, okay, wow, I wish I had gotten this a year ago, but I'm ready for it now? Can you give us some examples maybe of those types of experiences?
Yeah, I'll reference a book that I've read it multiple times now because I just really resonate with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, one book I'm really diving into deeply is The Secret Door to Success by Florence Scovel Shinn. And it just talks about, for those who are spiritual, it talks about success from, I guess, like in a spiritual sense. And it's not in the sense that like you have to be religious or anything. I want to get that point
Mm-hmm.
across. It just has some concepts that I think anybody could apply and get results from. One of them is the law of indifference, meaning that we at times, as like entrepreneurs, think, if I don't get this goal, I'm a failure,
Yeah.
rather than having a sense of indifference of whether this goes well or not. I'm at peace, I'm indifferent, I have my identity, I have my sense of self, and everything that we do is, you know, yes, we have the end goal in mind, the purpose that we're after. That's always in mind, but we should be indifferent about the results in between getting to that goal.
Hmm.
And also with I will say too, even I think some concepts don't resonate with you until you grow enough as a person where you hear it again and then it clicks. And I even noticed with myself on my journey that certain concepts, just some things you're going to understand the moment you hear it. And it's, whoa, that's deep. That makes sense. And then other things you're going to hear, it's going to be like, I don't understand what this person is saying. This sounds so woo woo and out
Yeah.
there. Like, but
Power of
I
now
think
comes to
it's
mind.
all about I think it's all about ultimately, as long as you're growing and your identity is at the level it needs to be, you're gonna always be led to certain things over time. And certain ideas are just not gonna resonate with you until you've gone through certain experiences in life. That's just my belief.
Exactly. I remember the one of the very first books that I read in my adult life when I was trying to find some information. As right after I had my first baby, and my sister had recommended this parenting book to me. And she said, now I want you to be careful. This is not the Bible. Take what works and leave what doesn't work. And so I think her advice very early on in my adult life, in my adult career, based on a specific problem or an issue or something that I was trying to solve right then, which was like, first baby, what do I do? And her advice right there was really helpful in helping me learn to filter that, because I had been reading a lot of self-help books prior to getting married because I worked for a really high performance, successful couple as their nanny. I lived with them, and just watching the way that they lived their lives and the vast library that they had, and any issue that I was struggling with, from time management to motivation or whatever it was, they would have a book recommendation. So I spent hours and hours and hours in their office reading through these beautiful, wonderful, helpful books on their shelves. And I grew up in a house where we really valued books and we valued knowledge, but it was more like reference style books and textbooks and
Mhm.
encyclopedias and things like that. And really, the self help or the how to make yourself better was a foreign concept to me before I became that nanny for that family. And so I was exposed to Stephen Covey and all these types of authors that I had really never thought about, oh, how to live a high achieving life. So I had a similar experience about a similar age that you did, meeting some people that just made me think, wow, how did they build this? How did they do this? And it wasn't just the fact that they were wealthy, they were amazing parents. They had great kids, they had successful careers, well educated. They just seemed like they had it all together. And living with them, I knew where they had it together and where they didn't, but at the same time, they were living at such a high level beyond anything I'd ever seen that it was very inspiring to me, and it really did form kind of a turning point in my life and help me figure out like what books are going to help me, what books are not going to help me, what passages, all that. So between that experience and then moving out on my own and having to start reading to solve specific things that I was experiencing, I really felt like I had discovered this hidden world of mentors. And so you probably have been in that situation yourself as well, being able to find mentorship from people, authors that had no idea that they're mentoring you because they put their work out there and they become hugely influential, impactful in your life. Can you share with us some of those mentors? You mentioned the young woman that you met, but then you went and got more mentors in the pages of these books in the forms of the authors or the stories that they told.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them I could think of off the top of my head that really stand out are Florence Scovel Shinn, like mentioned,
Mhm.
Grant Cardone, Ed Milet, Myron Golden, Russell Brunson, Napoleon Hill definitely is up there.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are some of my favorite, like, I guess, book mentors.
I love that I can read a book where the author has passed away. That's always a very deep experience for me because they've left behind their work and I'm able to learn from them even after they've passed away. So you really can have a mentor from any period of history, any point in time. So Stoicism really jumps to mind in that. It's been very
Oh,
impactful in my
awesome.
life, but most of those famous, great Stoic authors were from ancient history.
Are you into Marcus Aurelius by chance?
I read books that reference Marcus Aurelius. I don't read the originals because I'm more of a at this point in my life, I'm more of an audiobook and what do you call it? Maybe Spark Notes type of
Mhm.
person because maybe we can shift this conversation. Actually, that makes me think I would love to hear your great tips because there's so many books to read. There are so many great books out there, and I'm finding that if I'm not reading full time, I'm just not getting through the volume, and so I've had to start audiobooks and 2xing things and really looking at the summaries first before if I decide that I'm going to read something and see if I can get it out of the summary or the long summary, then I'm just going to skip the book. So let's shift gears a little bit now to the book itself that you wrote and give us some of your top tips for how to get more reading done.
Yeah, absolutely. In my follow-up book to How to Read 50 Books in a Year is How to Read 100 Books in a Year Like a CEO. So I mentioned this formula and I broke it down in a really simple term. To read more, as a simple formula, is the amount of books you want to read is equal to time, meaning you're going to require a significant bundle of time to read that many books that you're after. So for instance, 100 books, reading that is a lot harder than reading 50. So it's definitely more of a, I don't personally recommend people read 100. If you have a lot of time and you think it'll be valuable for you, I wouldn't go that route. I would go that route only if you have the time to
Hmm.
do it. But I think 50 is a good number. So it comes down to time. You got to have energy to be able to read that many books as well, because,
Yeah.
all the other things you're doing.
And podcasts and so many good things out there.
Yeah, with you gotta have the energy to read as well. And then the last component, discipline, like self-discipline. So those three things, time, energy, self-discipline, you can read however many books you want to read. And I would say too, when it comes to reading, you also have to be realistic, right? So if you're reading 100, if you're working 100 hours a week, chances
Mm,
are you're not going to read
yeah.
100 books in a year. I don't think that's really feasible for you because I read 100 books last year and it took
Wow.
a toll on me.
Did some
Yeah, it
research for your
was,
book.
yeah, because it was like 2 to 3 books per week that I was
Wow.
reading just to stay on pace for the goal, like for the whole year. So it's very brutal versus if you read 50 in a year, that's one a week. It's fairly
And you get
doable,
Christmas
in
off.
my opinion. Yeah, but it really comes down to just those three components if you want to read more, just time, energy, and discipline. And you also have to be realistic with your situation for the amount of books you want to read. I personally wouldn't recommend someone go read 100 books in a year. I just think that's really time consuming and it just takes away from being productive. I'll just be
Mm.
honest with you. I've done
Yeah.
it. I wouldn't recommend it, but definitely 50 or less is very manageable. Just like I said, just one a week.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit deeper, where you said if you read too much, you become less productive because we're reading these books to become more productive because we're having insights and shortcuts and all of that. So I have a kid who wants to be a YouTuber. So he spends a lot of time watching YouTube channels. And some people would say that's a waste of time. But if he wanted to be an artist, I would encourage that he spends a lot of time in an art museum looking at the great masters' work and really learning what makes great art. And so he's learning what makes great entertainment content. And so in your case, you read so many books. It's almost like you're standing in the master's hall and looking at the way that they are creating these things and getting really, really into this culture. And so when you decided to write a book, that was the first thing you said, I'm going to, instead of reading and consuming, standing in the art museum, now I'm going to go out there and I'm going to create one of these things that will be out there for the test of time. So how do you make that shift from reading to productivity and accomplishing something?
Absolutely. I'm gonna reference a time. So there was a single month where I read 33 books and
Mm,
for the whole month. And literally, I'm gonna tell you, don't do that. Because literally to do that, I was literally no joke. I would work, I'd come home, eat, read, sleep, repeat. That's how I did it. But that whole time I was just in a flow state. Like it was just
mm,
time was just passing. I didn't think about anything. And at the same time, like I knew I was doing it, but my brain was like also overwhelmed with information.
yeah.
And I understand with that whole month, I couldn't do anything productive during that time. So I think the fine line is you want to have enough information to then go act. And how you know you have enough, it's going to vary on the situation. It just because it depends on what are you learning for. Are you learning to, I don't know, make a book? You could learn to make a book in less than a day. I know it doesn't take long because I've done it. I've made books so I could teach someone how to make a book in less than a day. But if you're doing something like real estate, then that might take you a few months to figure it out, get the
Mhm,
action done, learn enough information where you feel comfortable enough taking action. So I think it really depends. But I think too, if I had to if I had to, I guess, give a blanket statement for everyone, I would say err on the side of action before learning because you will learn more through action than you will than just reading a textbook because
got it.
action is where you can now but at the same token I will throw in this caveat is you I think you should know enough general information where you understand
Mhm.
whatever you're trying to do and then you go act.
Yeah, we don't wanna be reading the book on how to make a parachute as we're falling through the sky after we've jumped out of the airplane. So, being able to balance that, I think it goes back to just the 80-20 Pareto's law, where it's like once you get about 80% of the information, you're really not going to ever be able to get 100% through reading. Trying to teach someone how to shoot baskets or play the piano by reading a book, it's just not gonna happen. You have to get out there and put the stuff into practice, and if you keep reading more books about basketball, you keep reading more books about the piano, it will never, ever, 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 ever give you 100% of what you need, no matter how long you swim around in analysis paralysis, because you have to eventually go shoot some baskets or put your hands on the keyboard to get that practice. And so, what have you found to be the most useful piece of knowledge that you have gotten from reading? And I don't mean like one passage from a particular author, but the most useful concept that you've gotten that you've been able to apply in your entrepreneurial journey and towards your passive income adventure bucket list?
That's a great question. The one concept that I have seen consistently across 300 books from different authors, different perspectives, is that all of the answers are within. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is you are the cause of your entire life, meaning all of your current circumstances are a result of like how you think, how you view the world, how you act. And Myron Golden says something that I really think it's not my passage, but it's something he said I think suits very well. It's be, do, than have. So
Mm.
to have the life you want, you have to be that person that life requires, and then you do the things that person does to get the result. If you don't have the life that you want, it's ultimately a matter of become the person. So that could be in the form of learning, taking action, listening to mentors, reading books, just life experiencing the person, then doing the things that create the end result. So in real estate, that might be for someone in the multifamily space, that might be putting in offers with sellers, getting a deal accepted, raising capital, and closing on the deal, and then managing the property,
Mm.
which you're not going to know that from day one, but you become that person where now over time, everybody looks at you like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. But it's because of this, all in
Mhm.
here, just who you are as an individual.
Yeah, nobody's ever told me I was amazing when I finished reading a book. That's just never happened. Now, you're a little bit different because you've read so many books that just the volume of books you've read is what makes you amazing. But have you ever finished a book and then told somebody what you learned in that book and had anybody say, "Wow, you're such an amazing person"? I just never had that happen to me. It's always when I went out and took action and applied what I learned from many, many books. And I love what you just said there when you said you spread that concept across 300 books and came out with this distilled piece of wisdom that the answers are within it 300 books. And it's amazing now that accomplishment of what you've realized. That's what makes you amazing because you took that and then you did something with it. So, can you tell us more about what you're working on right now? What is driving you? What does your future look like? You're still young. I'm ready to retire and go sit on a beach and you're just at the beginning of your journey. So what does your passive income adventure look like? The one that motivates you to just keep going and keep going through what you've been working on?
Yeah, so one of my targets is to get $1 million capital and then invest it at 10% cash on cash, like at a minimum. So that
It's
would
a
be
real thing, man. It's a real thing.
yeah,
That's a
so it'd
great
be
goal.
Yeah, so it'd be about 100,000 a year in
Mhm.
passive income, which is more than enough to live on. My
Yep.
lifestyle isn't crazy, but that's like the main goal. And so some of the things I have going on right now for that is I'm obviously an author, selling copies of books definitely helps
Mhm.
with that goal.
Yep.
Then also looking to acquire multifamily real estate, as well as I'm planning to get into tax deeds pretty soon, like some tax deed certificates, and more long-term project is building a private school with the
Oh,
help of my mentor. So I got a few different things I'm doing.
that's awesome. I have a friend who I have a couple of friends actually who have private schools. If you need some connections, let me know because they they do it out of passion and they do it because they love education, especially if it's an alternative method of teaching, but they can be also very lucrative. And so let me know. I think that's a great goal. I'm really into education. I homeschool, I unschool my kids. We're really off the beaten path as far as education goes. And I find that to be a fascinating topic. That's a great goal and one I have not heard on this show yet.
Yeah, because tell you how the idea even came up in my mind. So my mentor, she has two schools. She was just mentioning her like business
Mhm.
philosophy with how she monetizes her school. It like blew my freaking brain. It's just
Yeah.
like, what? Like, are you serious? I'm gonna just explain this really shortly. So what she does is she'll market the school, and with having the children, you obviously are going to end up having a relationship with their parents, right?
Mhm.
So you use the school as a means to get the parents' contact information, and
Oh,
then she'd propose them deals and various investment opportunities to the parents. And then so you serve the parents well,
wow.
then parents bring their friends,
Yep.
obviously, and then now also you're raising their children, you're taking care of them, and then as their children become productive members of society, years later, their children also they know you, they like you, they have a relationship with you, and now they also want to invest with you. And so it's like this just money just rolling into deals just
Yep.
left and
And a
right.
win-win-win for everybody involved because it's
Yep.
just that same old concept of developing relationships in a niche that you enjoy spending time in. I'm not going to go and pitch real estate investing at a medical conference because then I might have to sit around and listen to people talk about surgery and then they want me to talk about that. And I like, no. So I want to find a network of a place that I really enjoy and some place that I want to spend time doing things. And I've always really thought like the homeschool community wasn't really a good fit, but see, these are the kinds of things that you get when you're reading and you're networking in little ideas that start making your brain spin. Whether anything comes out of it remains to be seen. But at the same time, just surrounding yourself with concepts and ideas and thinking, okay, I'm going to give this a try for a while. I know that you have published a book and that you are writing a book. And so what did you do that really brought that book out of your head and onto paper and that action taking that you did so that then you could go out and use this book to expand your network and be able to find people who want to invest in projects with you?
Absolutely. So the book idea, I'll be honest, it was like in my head for about 2 years before it
Uh-huh.
actually came out. It came out because I was just like thinking about the idea. Just it just simmered in my brain over time. It's just because a lot of people would ask me the same question. Like I would tell them my story a little bit, and then they'd be like, "Dude, how do you read so much?
Yeah.
You do that?" Like, and then so I just tell them like, "Hey, you just go do X, Y, and Z." But I continually noticed, no matter who I was talking to, this one little subject of my life just was of interest. So I was like, "Huh, this must be a problem people have." It just clicked in my brain one day. Oh, this is a problem people have. So let's create a solution. Let's make a book for it. And then from there, I made the book. It took me about 2.5 months to do. I hired a company to help me do it
Mhm.
for the first book. And then from there, it just spiraled into a world of its own. It's just, I don't know what it is with people, but it's like you mention you're an author to them and they just, their whole demeanor
Yes.
towards stages is just like, oh, you're an author? What? I was like, "Where's your book? Let me buy it." I'm just like, "Oh, okay, just go here." But yeah, and then it just leads to they get curious about how you did it, and then it leads to conversations about other things, and that's how you network with people for various opportunities.
It's been great talking to you again. I feel like every time we talk, I learn something new because you're like this walking repository now of information. If I have something that I'm working on, something I'm struggling with, hey Thurben, what book should I read that will help me with this issue? Do you have some sort of a top 10 list? Because one of the things that really changed my life was when I was in business school. So I was an older adult. I think I went back to school when I was like 36, 37. And there was this list called the Personal MBA where it was, I think it's like 100 books. You've probably heard of this before. It's like a book list where if you read all 100 of these books, you will have the equivalent of an MBA. And it's only the cost of the books. And if you get it from the library, you can probably do it for $50. It reminded me of Goodwill Hunting, where he's like, you spent 120K on a college education that I paid $1.50 for in late fees at the library. And so the personal MBA book list is like this to me. Do you have something like that, like a top 10? And the way they categorize it, this is accounting, this is entrepreneurship, this is management. And so anytime I'm having a business issue, I just go to that book list and pick one out of there, and he updates it every once in a while. Do you have something like that you can just refer people to? Because they probably call you and ask you a lot, like, hey, I'm struggling with this. What should I read?
Oh, a lot of people ask me that. What are my favorite books? And to be quite honest, like the list is always a revolving door.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
because as I learn more, it's, I wouldn't recommend that. But the books that are, I don't have 10 that I would go with, but I have a few honorable mentions on the top
Yes.
of my mind. One would be Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And then another book by him as well is Outwitting the Devil.
Mhm.
Then Ed Milet's book that he recently made, The Power of One More, I would definitely
Mhm.
recommend that one to people. Boss Moves by Myron Golden and Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson.
Mm.
And probably How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Those are the ones I can like think of off the top of my head. Like I would recommend to anybody, like with
Wow.
certainty.
So you heard it here. He's read 300 books in the self-help and entrepreneurial space, and that is his list of what he's recommending. So just be sure that you take a look at those. So make sure you get your hands on these books. Take the time to read them. Thurben, how can people get a hold of you? And I always ask, more importantly, why should people get a hold of you after the show?
Yeah, easiest way for people to best ways to reach me are probably like best way honestly is to text me. They can text me at 813 813-298-4631. Again, that's 813-298-4631. Or you could reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Those are other methods as well. I don't like email. It's absolutely the worst way for someone to get a hold of me, but I would say like the quickest response is text messages.
Mm-hmm.
And then the people I ideally want to talk with are like people that want to make their first book. I'm happy to help with those people, or someone looking to passively invest in multifamily real estate. Those are my kind of, I guess, ideal people, at least for the moment. It may change, but for now.
Awesome. Thank you. So I know that you are going to accomplish some amazing things in the real estate space. Please continue to reach out to me because I have really enjoyed getting to know you over the last couple of months after the first couple of times that we spoke, and just learning from you about how to read more, how to be more productive, how to get more done, and then giving that exchange of, hey, real estate resources, right? And it's just a great example of people who may be in different points of their lives, but are able to basically learn from one another, who are able to take knowledge from one and transfer it to the other, no matter where we are in life, because everybody has something to offer. And that's one thing that I've really learned. The more and more people I talk to, there are some things that everybody has something to provide in a relationship. And so I really encourage you to reach out to Thurben after the show, because like I always say, we want to be in your network. We want you to be in our network. That's how we get things done. Listening to podcasts, reading books. At a certain point, you need to be able to put those concepts into action. And in the passive investing space, really, it's all about the relationships. It's like you mentioned with your friend with the school. It's about finding people that you enjoy spending time with, people that you respect, people who respect you, and being able to share investing opportunities. Because when you watch people who are living a passive income lifestyle, like the example you gave at the beginning of the show, you realize that it's a real thing and you can really accomplish it. And I find so many scams and so many people trying to peddle passive income that's just not a real vision of how to get there and what life could be like once you do get there. I find that just putting this out there, what's real, what this really looks like, is really, really helpful. And I always enjoy connecting with people from the show who reach out afterwards. So thank you, Thurben.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I don't know about you, but I'm really inspired to start reading even more books than I already am. I go in ebbs and flows where I'm reading a lot or I'm listening to a lot of audiobooks, and other times where I'm focusing on other things. And I need to learn how to keep that pressure up, because books give me the best start into what it is that I'm trying to do. But the thing I loved most about this interview is how Thurben finally turned that corner to talk about how books can actually be a productivity killer, and to drive ourselves to be able to take action. We need to be able to step away from the learning, because a lot of times learning feels like action when it's really not, and being able to get out there and finally start to take action, working on our dreams and goals. I would love to help you with that. So with Thurben, please be sure to reach out to us after the show. You can get a hold of me at www.highrise.group. That's HIGHRISE.GROUP/contact. I have a way that you can schedule, I have my calendar that you can schedule a free call on. You can join my accountability challenge. So if you need some help setting your goals and actually reaching to them, somebody who has been there and done that and really cares about you being able to accomplish those goals is what you'll get in that challenge. Also, be sure to check out the investments that we currently have available for accredited investors. And if you're not accredited, please give me a call so I can explain what accredited actually means and the investing opportunities you may have that you don't even know about. So I hope you go away from this episode feeling inspired to learn more, but also to do more. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to check out some of our other episodes until our next upload. And I can't wait until our next passive income adventure.